Hey everybody, it's Miss Bailey, and this is a social studies lesson. And what we're starting to talk about is why Europeans, and particularly the English, came to North America, which is our continent, but specifically why they settled in Virginia. So we know that Virginia is a state that we live in, and we have looked at some of the geography of Virginia, like the waterways, um, different regions of Virginia, the states bordering Virginia. And then we looked at Indian groups in Virginia, or the first Americans that were here first, and some of their culture and their languages, and because they were here first. And now we're going to start looking at English settlers coming from England um, to live in Virginia. And the vocabulary word for that is colonize or colonization. That means that they left England and came to Virginia and made a home in Virginia. So I'm going to just kind of play a couple of these little audio sound bites, just kind of reading the text to you. And then there's going to be an activity for you guys to complete afterwards. But if you look at the map right here where my cursor is, so we're looking at English colonization, and here's England. It's part of Europe. And so the settlers had to leave England by boat or ship, travel across the Atlantic Ocean, and then they settled here in Virginia. And because the voyages took so long back then, once they got to Virginia, they were trying to set up permanent colonies or towns, places to live. So we're going to look at, why they chose particular places, why they came, and then also, the mixing of English, settlers versus the first Americans that were here, the Indian groups, and how they interacted when they got here. Okay, so I'm just going to play a couple of these little audio sound bites.
Some European countries, including England, were in competition to increase their wealth and power by expanding their empires to America. The King of England had the power to grant charters allowing settlement in North America. The first permanent English settlement in British North America was Jamestown, which was founded in 1607 as an economic venture. Farewell to England.
Okay, so when we're talking about economic venture, we're just talking about they wanted to increase their wealth, and that means money. And they thought there might be resources here in Virginia, in North America, that they didn't have in England or Europe. So they were going to different parts of the world to see what kind of resources they might find to increase their wealth. So England specifically came to the part of Virginia that we now know as Jamestown and established the first permanent English settlement, which just means that they were English people, came from England to Jamestown, and that colony actually lasted. It was permanent, where some other colonies previously did not last. Okay. And what year was it? Miss Wilder will be very mad at you if you don't get this. 1607 was when Jamestown was founded. Okay, so I'm just going to play a couple more of these little sound bites.
Virginia, the Atlantic Ocean, England. Word to know, colony, a place far from home where a group of people called colonists settle. Their mother country rules the colony. The Lost Colony. With hopes high, 110 men, women, and children set sail for the New World. On a hot July day in 1587, the English colonists anchored off Roanoke Island, in what is now North Carolina. When a supply ship returned in 1590, every single settler had vanished. A tree trunk with the word Crow scratched in it left a clue to their fate. Tales of the lost colony haunted England, and it would be many years before anyone dared to start another settlement. What was the best way to make a colony work? England decided to set up each colony as a business. A colony was an economic venture. Imagine a bakery. You need money to buy ingredients to make cakes. You need people to do the baking and selling. To raise money to build a bakery, you can get people to invest, lend you cash so you can start baking. If you sell a lot of cakes, you will make a profit. When the company is a success, you pay each investor a share of the profits. That was how Virginia was started, as a place to get rich. But making a fortune in the Americas was difficult, dangerous, and often deadly.
Okay, so that's just a little bit of the history kind of behind. Before Jamestown, there was a lost colony in 1587, if you look right here. But then Jamestown was founded a few years later in 1607, and that one was permanent. So we are going to look at some reasons maybe why Jamestown was a good place to settle. What were some of the resources there that made it more livable, where other places maybe weren't so great to settle because there weren't as many resources. Okay.
The English believed the natural resources at Jamestown would benefit England. The location and physical characteristics of the Jamestown site influenced the decision to settle there. Off to Jamestown. On a brisk December day in 1606, the Virginia Company launched 3 small ships, the Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery, with more than 100 men and boys aboard, and set sail across the Atlantic. Who were they? They were well-to-do gentlemen, soldiers, laborers, and 3 young orphans. On April 26, 1607, they made their first landfall at a place they named Cape Henry. They planted a small cross to honor their Christian faith, then hopped back onto their ships and kept sailing. Finally, on May 13th, the weary voyagers dropped anchor. The next day, they rowed ashore, and with weapons clutched tightly, began to explore some land that seemed like a good place for their new home. The perfect place? The Virginia Company had strict orders from England to settle at least 100 miles upriver, but the colonists saw a narrow peninsula bordered on 3 sides by the James River that looked perfect. The water along the shore was deep enough for their ships to dock. It could be easily defended from attack by Spanish ships, and it was connected to the mainland by a skinny strip of land, making it easier to defend against Indian attacks. Natural resources were bountiful. The settlers thought there was ample fresh water. There was fruit for picking, timber for building houses, waters full of fish, and iron ore for making pots and weapons. The site was perfect. Or was it?
Okay, so we know that they chose that particular site because of the location. It seemed like it would be a safe place, easy to defend, being a peninsula. And then there were plenty of natural resources for them to live on, things that you need for life, like fresh water. There was fruit, wood, timber for building houses, and then they had the water full of fish so that they would, have plenty to eat. All right, so now we're going to listen to Danger Ahead.
Danger Ahead. Jamestown, founded in 1607, became the first permanent English settlement in British North America, but life in James City got off to a rocky start. The settlers fought with the Naturals, the English name for the Indians, who were simply trying to defend themselves. The men quickly built a three-sided fort along the river they named the James to honor their king. The gentlemen, well-to-do investors who had come to Virginia to grab gold, land, and profits from goods sent back to England, would not pitch in with the work. Was that fair? Spring gave way to a hot summer. Mosquitoes swarmed, and food began to rot. Hunger arose, the water supplies grew foul, and diseases spread. Colonists began dying, and for the next few months, it seemed as if there was someone new to bury almost every day. By September of 1607, almost half the settlers lay dead. Perhaps Jamestown had been a poor location after all. Could Virginia be saved? The native peoples and the English settlers in Virginia established trading relationships, and for a while had positive interactions. When worlds met, what happened when the English settlers met the Virginia Indians? Over time, the native peoples realized the English settlement would keep growing. They believed the settlers were invaders who would one day take over Indian lands. Still, at first they tried to get along. They showed the hungry settlers how to plant corn and harvest tobacco. They traded food, furs, and leather with the English in exchange for tools, pots, and copper for jewelry.
Okay, so far we've looked at why Europeans, and particularly the English, came to North America trying to find resources and increase their wealth. And then we've seen why they particularly picked Jamestown, why that area was good for colonization, the resources there, and it was a safe location. And now we're looking at what happened with the English, some of the hardships they faced because they were in a new place, didn't really understand the land, was different from England. And so they had some hardships. And then what happened when they interacted with the Indians or the naturals or the first Americans, whatever term you want to give the Indians. So we're going to stop here, and I'm going to pause the video and attach some activities for you guys to fill out about why the English came to North America, and then some of the resources that were available at Jamestown and why they picked that particular location, and how it became the first permanent English settlement in North America. Okay, so I'll stop the video and I'm going to post it, and then there'll be some activities for you guys to complete and post onto Seesaw.